Even though I knew that wailing at a British noble's funeral was disrespectful to the deceased, I still allowed my husband's adopted sister to mourn loudly. It was all because, in my previous life, when a British noble relative of my husband passed away, a lawyer informed him that he could inherit the estate and invited him to the funeral. The adopted sister insisted on tagging along to see the world, hoping to curry favor with the nobility and stand out in front of others. Even going so far as to mourn loudly in public, I quickly stopped her, saying, "British nobility frown upon loud mourning. Not only might we lose the inheritance, but we could even be thrown out." My adopted sister cried, saying I looked down on her and thought she wasn't worthy of befriending nobles. She ran out and was mistakenly killed by street thugs. I thought my husband would lose control, but he silently attended the funeral and smoothly inherited the estate. On our wedding anniversary half a year later, my husband took me to the snowy mountains for photos. As soon as we reached the summit, he stuffed me into a sleeping bag and tied it shut. If it weren't for you making a big deal out of nothing back then, how could Xiaoya have run out and been shot? Later, I was buried alive by snow and froze to death, while my husband used that noble inheritance to become the CEO of a listed company. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day when my husband's adopted sister insisted on wailing at the funeral. "Sister-in-law, why won't you let me mourn? The Duke has no children. What's wrong with me crying for him?" On the way to the funeral, hearing my husband's adopted sister's familiar complaints, I soberly realized I had been reborn. Adopted sister Su Xiaoya's eyes were red. Before she could even start crying to win sympathy, she was already putting on a show of being bullied by me. My mother-in-law hugged her tenderly and shot me a glare. "This is a noble funeral attended by distinguished people. What's wrong with crying a little? What if someone sees her kindness and a wealthy suitor comes knocking at her door?" Seeing that she had someone to back her up, Su Xiaoya no longer hid her intentions and applied eyeshadow in front of the mirror. "I've spent a month studying makeup, and with this look today, I'm sure I'll look pitiful when I cry. My sister-in-law is just jealous of my youth and beauty, afraid I'll outshine her in front of the nobles." For today's funeral, Su Xiaoya had been well prepared. She spent a fortune on a month-long skincare regimen at a top-tier beauty salon and even took special lessons on how to cry on cue. I sneered, a mocking glint in my eyes. "This is a funeral, not a matchmaking event, dressed so flamboyantly. Are you afraid others won't notice you're trying to catch a man, Su Xiaoya?" Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, sobbed tearfully, I specifically researched the Duke's life, hired a master to write a eulogy, and memorized it until it was perfectly smooth. "Isn't it nice for the Duke to know that a foreign guest is thinking of him, yet you insist on looking down on me from the bottom of your heart?" Husband Zhou Yiming also stood by, impatiently mocking, "Lin Muqing, what's wrong with you? Isn't it enough that you caused trouble at home? Do you have to embarrass us abroad too? How much effort has Xiaoya put into this funeral? It might even earn us some respect. And you, what do you do besides nitpicking?" Zhou Yiming has always been like this, doting on his adopted sister, always thinking that I'm the one bullying her. No matter what absurd things my adopted sister did, he never disciplined her, instead forcing me to recognize her virtues. In my previous life, I specifically emphasized that crying loudly at a British noble funeral is a great disrespect. My father-in-law is still waiting for money to save his life. Only after receiving the inheritance can the family breathe a sigh of relief. If we truly disturb the peace of the deceased, it will make all the nobles present uncomfortable. Don't count on inheriting the estate. We might just get kicked out of the funeral on the spot. But Su Xiaoya was stubborn and refused to listen, insisting on wailing in grief. Seeing that I couldn't persuade her, I had no choice but to cover her mouth in front of everyone to keep her from crying out. Unexpectedly, Su Xiaoya was furious. After running out crying, she was tragically mistaken for a target and killed by a rioter. My husband successfully inherited the estate, then immediately blamed me for his adopted sister's death and heartlessly pushed me off a snowy mountain. In this life, I'm prepared to watch Su Xiaoya dig her own grave. She can cry all she wants. If my husband doesn't get the inheritance today, there will be no money left to treat my father-in-law's illness. By then, we'll probably have to prepare for his funeral, and that's when their whole family should really be wailing. After we entered, perhaps noticing we were foreign guests, the waitress explained the funeral procedures to us and couldn't help but remind us. According to British aristocratic customs, crying and mourning are not allowed at the scene. As soon as the waitress left, Su Xiaoya raised an eyebrow. She's just jealous that I'm prettier than her, afraid her master might take a liking to me. My mother-in-law nodded eagerly. Which of the women serving the nobility doesn't have a head full of schemes? I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Su Xiaoya was far too confident. Do you really think you're so beautiful that you could make every woman in the world jealous? Seeing me laugh, she seemed to suddenly understand something. You were chatting so warmly with that waitress, you must have bribed her long ago. You really went to great lengths just to stop me from mourning. Hearing this, Zhou Yiming also yelled at me, Lin Muqing, you better behave. Today's funeral will be attended by Prince Charles of the British royal family. If you dare to ruin my smooth inheritance of the estate, I will definitely not let you off. Upon hearing the word prince, Su Xiaoya's eyes lit up. My mother-in-law beside me hurriedly warned me, Lin Muqing, don't you dare cause trouble. If you delay me from becoming the prince's mother-in-law, I'll make sure Yiming divorces you. I couldn't help but find it amusing. Did they really think Su Xiaoya had that kind of ability? Could she really captivate Prince Charles with just one glance, making him determined to marry her, knowing that the nobility and royalty are present? Yet she dares to use mourning as a pretext to flirt with men. I'm waiting to see the spectacle of them getting what they deserve. As more and more guests gathered, Su Xiaoya seized every eligible man she could find to shake hands with. Using a clumsy English accent, she exuded a self-infatuated charm. Suddenly, she covered her chest, pretending to be short of breath, and turned to me, sister-in-law, help me get the spray from the car. I'm afraid I might get too nervous and have trouble breathing later. She really needs to have the spray ready for the upcoming wailing and crying. Without thinking much, I went to the car. As soon as I opened the door and got in, my hands and feet were suddenly tied up. Then, with a thud, the car door locked. Su Xiaoya looked at me disdainfully through the car window. You've been stopping me again and again. Just because you're afraid I'll marry into nobility and outshine you. My mother-in-law followed with a cold glance in my direction. You, a married woman with a tarnished reputation, have no chance. Today, there are so many talented young men, enough for our Xiaoya to pick to her heart's content. Seeing Zhou Yiming standing outside, unmoved, I glared fiercely at the man. You just let them lock me in. It's so hot, and the car is completely airtight. Do you want to suffocate me to death? He furrowed his brows tightly and scolded impatiently. Stop playing the victim here. I'm tired of watching you compete with Xiaoya every single day. Stay in the car and don't move until the funeral is over. After saying that, the man turned and walked away, while Su Xiaoya was still touching up her makeup in the rearview mirror. Watching her frantically patting powder on her face, I couldn't help but sneer. Put on a bit more powder, and people might think we're here for your funeral today. The woman frowned at first, but then her lips curled into a smirk. Sister-in-law, you should actually hope I land a wealthy husband. Otherwise, if I can't find a good man, I wouldn't mind stealing my brother back. Ever since Zhou Yiming pushed me off the snowy mountain, I saw through his unspeakable feelings for Su Xiaoya. He pinned the blame for the woman's accidental death on me, even going so far as to plot to kill me. On the surface, the man is my husband, but in his heart, there has only ever been his adopted sister. Once I realized this, I stared at the woman and curled the corner of my mouth. Steal what? I've long since stopped caring about that scumbag. He's all yours. After the funeral began, Su Xiaoya read the eulogy in front of everyone. At first, she only sobbed quietly, but it gradually turned into uncontrollable weeping. Everyone around her was staring at her strangely, but Su Xiaoya remained completely unaware. Instead, she thought the shock in everyone's eyes was all moved by her sorrow. A gentleman, seeing her cry so sadly, handed her a handkerchief as she stepped off the stage. Su Xiaoya's eyes lit up, taking it as the man's initiative to strike up a conversation. The crying instantly grew several decibels louder, tears falling like a broken string. The man's female companion immediately sneered, poking at her mockingly. You're from abroad, so you probably don't understand our customs, right? At such a solemn occasion as a funeral, who are you putting on such a show of tears for? Su Xiaoya was convinced she was jealous of the man's attention toward her, and immediately stiffened her neck to challenge. You don't feel the slightest bit of sorrow over the Duke's death, so you think shedding a tear isn't worth it. You're so cold-blooded and heartless. How dare you lecture me on manners? After lashing out, Su Xiaoya realized she had started crying. Sure enough, she managed to attract a man, and even made the noble women nearby feel a tinge of jealousy. She secretly felt certain that her crying act had worked. She immediately pulled her mother-in-law into the wailing, making a commotion louder than a trumpet blaring. This caused all the guests present to frown in displeasure. Everyone was afraid of causing trouble and quickly urged the pastor, who held a special status, to step forward and intervene. They thought that if he explained the funeral customs, perhaps this foreign woman would listen. Little did they know that as soon as the pastor raised his hand, intending to pat Su Xiaoya's shoulder to comfort her while she cried, the woman looked up, saw an old man, and with a flick of her hand, pushed him away. The priest's face immediately darkened at the rude gesture, and he sternly warned, "Stop crying. Our noble funerals emphasize quiet mourning. Your commotion is a great disrespect to the deceased." Su Xiaoya firmly believed that this old man was deliberately picking on her because he had failed to take advantage of her. She immediately turned hostile. Even God teaches people to have compassion, yet you stubbornly cling to your outdated, rigid rules. You won't even let people cry. Why suppress human nature like this? With this twisted logic thrown at him, the pastor stood frozen in place, unable to respond for a long time. Then all eyes in the room swept over. And Su Xiaoya immediately felt elated. She simply thought it was her unique insights and sharp eloquence that were too brilliant, stunning the entire room. As for those unfriendly glances, they were nothing more than women driven mad with jealousy. She immediately leaned in and whispered into Zhou Yuming's ear, "Bro, hurry up and cry. See, everyone appreciates me so much. Don't you want to make more connections with the nobility? This is a great chance to make yourself known." Zhou Yuming, hearing there was something to gain, immediately started wailing as if he had lost his parents. At that moment, I had just been unexpectedly saved by a noble and was standing on the second floor of the funeral venue. Su Xiaoya's entire family's tearful performance was seen through clearly. Those fools were crying their hearts out, completely oblivious to the nobleman upstairs, whose face was as dark as storm clouds. The real show is yet to come. The wailing and commotion made it impossible to proceed with the funeral ceremony. The Duke's housekeeper could no longer bear it and stepped forward to advise Su Xiaoya, "Madam, you have never met the Duke and do not understand his temperament. I have served the Duke for 40 years, and in his later years, he often said that he disliked the most those who put on a show of weeping at funerals." However, Su Xiaoya was convinced that the woman was holding back her anger because she had not received any inheritance. Some people serve for 40 years and only deserve wages, not even earning a title. How could they understand the Duke's suffering? The Duke died all alone. How could you, who accompanied him for 40 years, be so heartless? These words were like a knife, instantly making the housekeeper's eyes well up with tears. Her deep sorrow for the deceased could no longer be contained, and she turned and walked away. Seeing this, I immediately chased after her, wanting to offer a few words of comfort. Su Xiaoya caught sight of it and immediately yelled at me, "Why are you everywhere? You're quite something, managing to escape even while tied up. You latch onto anyone you see, trying to cozy up to a female housekeeper. What good could that possibly bring you?" I gave the woman a disdainful glare. How dare Su Xiaoya stubbornly claim to know the Duke's life story? She didn't even know that this housekeeper was the person the Duke respected most during his lifetime. She was originally the first in line to inherit according to the will, but she remembered how well the Duke had treated her during his lifetime. Thinking about her advanced age, she decided to simply decline the inheritance and leave it to those in greater need. With that in mind, how dare Su Xiaoya publicly humiliate her? As soon as the butler left, Su Xiaoya, seeing that no one was in the way anymore, quickly waved her hand to signal Zhou Yuming and her mother-in-law to step aside. She knelt down with a thud, embracing the Duke's coffin, and wept as if her heart were breaking. She was determined to make sure Prince Charlie, who would be arriving soon, would see at first glance just how deeply devoted she was. The woman's expression was truly unpleasant, and the lawyer who had invited us to the funeral immediately grew anxious. "Stop wailing. Prince Charlie will be here any moment, and he values noble etiquette above all. If he sees you causing a scene with your crying here, he'll have you thrown out on the spot." Su Xiaoya immediately bristled. "You, a lawyer, dare to spin such lies to the air? Are you deliberately using Prince Charlie to pressure us, trying to find loopholes to swallow the property?" "Right." The lawyer was left speechless, his eyes blazing with anger. "It's clearly you who are disturbing the funeral here, preventing the Duke from resting in peace, yet you come to throw mud at me." Su Xiaoya snorted disdainfully, not bothering to pay him any attention. Looking up, she happened to see me heading upstairs with the housekeeper, and it seemed as if she suddenly understood something. She abruptly turned and rushed over to block my way, gritting her teeth and whispering, "Well done. You went to great lengths to gather so many people to block me from mourning. Isn't it just because you're afraid I'll steal the spotlight in front of Prince Charles?" I curled the corner of my lips and sneered coldly. "You look just like a wild cat in heat now. Who do you think wants to watch you howl all over the place?" Su Xiaoya trembled with rage, her eyes darting around before she deliberately twisted her foot and tumbled straight down the stairs, landing hard on the floor. She immediately let out a loud wail, pulling out all the stops in her tantrum. "What have I done wrong, sister-in-law, that you would treat me like this?" As soon as the words left her mouth, the gazes of the surrounding guests turned icy cold. "All right, the crying act is overdone. Now it's time to switch to the bitter flesh strategy. Are you that jealous? You had to push her so hard in a situation like this. You've completely disgraced our Zhou family." Zhou Yuming rushed over, scolding me without any regard for my feeling that wasn't enough to vent his anger. He slapped me hard across the face. Prince Charles is almost here, and you're still causing trouble out of jealousy. Get out of here right now. Leave immediately. As soon as the words were spoken, my mother-in-law and adopted sister rushed over, grabbing me and dragging me outside. Just as I was about to be dragged out the door, my arm was gripped so tightly it hurt. Stop! A sharp rebuke rang out, and those few people immediately froze. The crowd parted with a rustle, leaving only the sound of leather shoes grinding against the ground in the air. A man wearing a royal badge on his chest stepped forward, his noble aura so overwhelming that no one dared to make a sound. You've already done something taboo like wailing before the spirit, and now you dare to resort to violence in public. It seems there's no need for you to inherit this legacy. Xiaoyasu and Yuming Zhou's faces instantly drained of color. How could they have run into Prince Charlie while dragging someone away? The man hurriedly stepped forward, his voice trembling. Prince Charlie, please don't misunderstand. This woman was causing a scene at the funeral, and we were just helping to maintain order. Prince Charlie sneered, raising his hand to point at the door. Do you think we're blind? It's you who's wailing here and disrupting the funeral. Stop pretending to maintain order. It's you, the uncivilized ones, who should get out. Not expecting Prince Charlie to rebuke him so mercilessly, Zhou Yuming's face turned pale and then flushed with anger, and Su Xiaoya slumped to the ground, holding her ankle as tears came on cue. Prince Charlie, look, I sprained my ankle because she pushed me. She's bullying me like this, and you still want to protect her. The woman thought her pitiful appearance was enough to soften a man's heart. Little did she know. Prince Charlie stared at her with a look as if watching a clown. Have you cried enough? If you want to cry, go outside. Our funeral doesn't allow mourning wails. Su Xiaoya, who had been harshly scolded, felt her face flush with heat. She suddenly turned her head and glared at me beside her, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. It's you. It must be you who's been stirring up trouble behind my back. You're really something, aren't you? From a waiter to Prince Charlie, you've managed to cozy up to them all, and even got them to badmouth me in advance. I glanced up at her, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. How could I possibly have such connections and abilities? You're giving me too much credit. You were the one who wouldn't listen to advice, and now you're trying to shift the blame onto others. As soon as the words were spoken, Prince Charles couldn't help but roar in anger. Shut up. It was you who were crying and wailing, and you who dragged people away. Trying to twist the truth here. Do you really think everyone is blind? Su Xiaoya, seeing the prince's face darken, immediately panicked and waved her hands. Prince Charlie, we are guests from a foreign land and truly didn't know that mourning is not allowed here. The noble lady beside them immediately spoke up, her tone laced with disdain. Stop pretending you didn't know. I just told you, and you mocked me for being heartless. The pastor also tried to dissuade you, but you turned around and said he didn't understand God's mercy. Right after that, the lawyer angrily stepped forward to complain. I kindly advised you not to cry uncontrollably and disrupt the funeral customs, but you turned around and accused me of coveting the inheritance. I've lived most of my life, and this is the first time I've been insulted like this, seeing everyone around me getting worked up. I simply decided to speak my mind before we came. I told you that crying at British aristocratic funerals is not allowed, but one of you was busy flirting with men, and the other was solely focused on climbing the social ladder. Who took this taboo seriously? Now that you've caused trouble, you're pushing all the blame onto me. Have some shame, will you? A glint of calculation flashed in Su Xiaoya's eyes, and she immediately began fabricating at the top of her voice. Sister-in-law, it was you who told me to wail. You said it would win everyone's sympathy and help me get to know more nobles. You even said to ignore anyone who tried to stop me, that they must have ulterior motives. Now that you're being criticized, you turn around and blame me. What are you really up to? Zhou Yuming immediately chimed in, firmly insisting, that's right. It was all Lin Muqing's idea. She said she knows the rules of the nobility best. She told us to cry as hard as we could, and said the more pitiful we looked, the more respectful it would seem. My mother-in-law also pushed forward, spitting at me and pointing. Exactly. Don't be fooled by this woman's delicate appearance. It was all her schemes. If there's any punishment, it should fall on her alone. It has nothing to do with my son and daughter. I stared at this family with disgust, wishing I could slap myself twice. I must have been blind back then to choose such a man and marry into this rotten nest. Before I could even speak, Prince Charlie slammed his hand on the table. This lady was just rescued by me from your car, half dead. You've bullied her enough, and now you're throwing all the blame on her, accusing her of framing you. Do you think I'm blind or stupid? The faces across from me instantly drained of color, as if they had seen a ghost. They never would have imagined that I had been rescued by Prince Charlie when I got out of the car. Su Xiaoya's lips trembled as she hurriedly cried out in protest. She was the one who overslept and didn't get out of the car with us. It wasn't us who locked her in on purpose. Zhou Yuming quickly stepped forward to chime in. That's right, she's always lazy and sleepy, doing nothing all day long. Prince Charlie, don't be fooled by her. She may look gentle, but she's capable of all sorts of wicked deeds. Seeing them slander me without a hint of shame, my heart sank completely. Looking back, the marriage of the past few years has been nothing short of a complete joke. Prince Charlie angrily grabbed the freshly printed surveillance photos and flung them directly into Zhou Yuming's face. Do you really think the parking lot has no surveillance? What you did to her is captured clearly on camera, even if she is your wife. Treating her like this is still against the law. Prince Charles turned to look at me, his eyes filled with evident distress and reluctance. Ms. Lin, I mentioned calling the police for you earlier, but you said it wasn't necessary. Look at how these people are slandering you, and you're still protecting them. I still shook my head. After all, in a foreign land, if this really escalates to the police and makes international news, it would be too embarrassing. Prince Charlie gritted his teeth and endured it, then gestured with his chin toward the guards. Drag these people out and throw them far away. Zhou Yuming thought about the purpose of this trip. The matter of inheriting the estate couldn't be ruined. Immediately, he stiffened his neck and shouted, Prince Charles, I am the legitimate heir to the Duke's estate. You can't abuse your authority. You want to drive us out and also revoke my inheritance rights, if this matter escalates. It won't be good for your reputation. Prince Charles glanced at him as if he were a lunatic. With such a distant blood relation, do you really think you're entitled to claim inheritance? The dukes will never even mention leaving any inheritance to you. At these words, the Zhou family's faces turned pale, their eyes filled with panic. Zhou Yuming blurted out in a panic, Prince Charles, are you trying to use your status to seize our property? Prince Charles couldn't be bothered to respond and stepped aside to make way for the lawyer. The lawyer took a step forward. The Duke has no children, and although you are the legitimate heir by blood, the Duke's will makes no mention of you at all. Inheritance law stipulates that the deceased will takes precedence over distant relatives by blood. Zhou Yuming's face instantly turned pale, and he shouted at the top of his voice, What nonsense are you talking about? I don't understand a word of it. At that moment, the former housekeeper stepped out from behind. The lawyer casually pulled the will document from his accompanying bag. The Duke had only this one will drawn up during his lifetime, with the first in line being this housekeeper. She voluntarily gave up her claim, which is why you relatives with a bit of blood connection are even being considered. Zhou Yuming and Su Xiaoya's faces froze, and the others were filled with deep regret. They never imagined that the housekeeper they had previously slighted held such a high position in the Duke's heart. The housekeeper stared at them, her voice heavy. At my age, I had thought of giving up the inheritance to do some good, but your behavior at the funeral shows no respect for the Duke at all. No, I've changed my mind. As soon as the words were spoken, the lawyer immediately added, So, don't even think about inheriting the Duke's estate. This funeral is not for the unruly. Please leave at once. Zhou Yuming was completely panicked now, grabbing me and dragging me into a deserted corner. By the way, urgently begging me, Honey, could you please explain to Prince Charles that locking you in the car was truly unintentional? We're husband and wife, so that inheritance is joint property. You can't just stand by and watch it go to waste. I sneered, watching as this man still had the nerve to come begging me. Now you remember I'm your wife. Why didn't you think of that when you locked me in the car just now? Your mom and your sister are giving me such a hard time, and you're just standing by watching. The man was choked, his face flushed red, and his eyes blazing with fury. Lin Muqing, if it weren't for you and Xiaoya constantly vying for attention, would I treat you like this? It's all your own doing. Can't you think about this family for once? Every time he brings up the past, he accuses me of targeting his adopted sister. I just can't hold back my anger. Zhou Yuming, it was clearly Su Xiaoya who started the trouble, yet you insist it was me causing the problem. I've told you this 100 times, and you always defend her, not listening to a single word. Since you two are so well matched, I'll step aside and make room for her. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhou Yuming's face flushed bright red, as if he had been deeply insulted. Lin Muqing, you're insane. Xiaoya is my sister. What nonsense are you spouting? I curled the corner of my mouth. What does it matter if she's my sister, without blood ties binding us? Why fear idle gossip? Legally, you are both legally married with the marriage certificate. Knowing there was no chance of cozying up to the nobility, Su Xiaoya couldn't hide the smile in her eyes the moment I offered to give up my seat. Bro, since she wants to leave, just let her go. Now we can be together openly, with no outsiders in the family to get in the way. He ignored Su Xiaoya's words and just yelled at me, Lin Muqing, can you stop judging others with such dirty thoughts? Didn't I ask you to put in a good word for me in front of Prince Charles for the sake of our family? And what do? You turn around and accuse me of having an improper relationship with Xiaoya. In the end, Isn't Zhou Yiming just afraid that his dirty little secrets with Su Xiaoya will be exposed to the public? Expect me to keep covering for them. In your dreams, I watched the man coldly, enunciating each word clearly. I don't care to know whether your feelings for Su Xiaoya are sibling affection or something else. But as for you and me, this divorce is final. I'll send you the divorce papers as soon as we return to the country. Just wait for it. Zhou Yiming's face instantly fell, his voice trembling with urgency. Lin Muqing, even if you don't consider our marital bond, for the sake of my father, could you please put in a good word for me with Prince Charles? My father is still lying in the hospital, without the inheritance. How long can he hold on with just our meager salaries? This money isn't for my greed, it's to save my father's life. If I hadn't died once in my previous life and seen through his scumbag nature. These words might truly deceive me into softening my heart, but in my previous life, he used the excuse of taking anniversary photos for our wedding. He coaxed me into happily climbing the snowy mountain, only to turn around and bury me in the snow to freeze to death. The man still owes me a life debt that he hasn't repaid, still want me to care about his father on the sickbed. Dream on. I curled my lips and sneered coldly. I'm about to divorce you. What does your father's medical expenses have to do with me? Did I make him sick? Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law's face instantly twisted into a knot, and she lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to hit me. Prince Charles, hearing the commotion, rushed over and immediately shielded me behind him, sternly rebuking, "You are utterly lawless. How dare you even think of resorting to violence? Do you think I'm just a decoration standing here?" As soon as he finished speaking, his guards had already called the police. The Zhou family was collectively taken to the police station to give statements and was deported back to their home country that very day. They were taken away, and I stayed to attend the Duke's funeral. Before leaving the funeral, Prince Charlie specifically sought me out. If I needed, he could help me contact a lawyer domestically to provide me with legal support, ensuring I could smoothly divorce the scumbag. I thanked him and said that if I really needed help, I would contact him. After returning to China, I immediately filed for divorce, and Zhou Yiming immediately flew into a rage. "You cost me my inheritance, and I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and you dare to bring up divorce?" Lin Muqing, after a trip to the British aristocracy, you really think you're something, don't you? You absolutely have to divorce me. Which nobleman has stolen your heart? Could it be that Prince Charles? I looked at his flustered and angry expression, sneered, and reminded him, as a married woman from a foreign country, why would I dare to dream of Prince Charles? What kind of woman hasn't he seen? Zhou Yiming's face stiffened, and he started hurling baseless accusations again. That would be other noble men, or that lawyer. I stared into his eyes and reminded him disdainfully, thinking about picking up men at a funeral. That's the kind of filthy mindset only Su Xiaoya would have. Do you think everyone is cut from the same cloth as you Zhou family people? I want a divorce. I can't stand the sight of you anymore. The man was infuriated by these words and roared at the top of his lungs. Why on earth do you still suspect I have feelings for Xiaoya? I've always treated her like a sister. I care about you so much. Can you please stop making a fuss? Seeing him still deceiving himself, I directly exposed him. You care about me? You're just hoping I'll subsidize your Zhou family. Dragging out the divorce is just because you borrowed a bunch of money for your dad's treatment and want to drag me into paying it back. Hearing this, my mother-in-law immediately rushed over. You wretched woman, thinking you can divorce and live freely? Not a chance. I glanced at the Zhou family's predatory expressions and slowly added, do you think your refusal will work? Once we've been separated long enough, the divorce will happen automatically. A few months later, Zhou Yiming's father passed away, but at the funeral, they wouldn't even let the old man depart with dignity. The camera was pointed directly at the body, brazenly starting a live stream. A group of people insisted that I had mistreated my father-in-law, and they even got me trending on social media. Su Xiaoya covered her face, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. That heartless Lin Muqing not only mistreated her father-in-law on a daily basis, but also deliberately embezzled the life-saving money and ran off. Zhou Yiming's eyes were red, his face smeared with snot and tears. Exactly, after attending a noble funeral in England, her mind was completely set on some other man, and she kept arguing and insisting on a divorce. The mother-in-law slapped her thigh, wailing as if her heart were being torn apart. Old man, how can your life be so bitter? To have such a heartless, wicked daughter-in-law. The whole family cried their hearts out, tears and snot streaming down their faces, while the barrage of negative comments instantly exploded. Holy crap, this woman is way too ruthless, isn't she? Abusing her father-in-law and running off with the life-saving money. Is she even human? Does no one care about this kind of person after a divorce? She must be taught a lesson. I was quickly exposed by netizens, leaving no stone unturned. When the public opinion first surged, I didn't want to explain much. After all, Zhou Yiming's father had just passed away, and the deceased should be respected. There was no need to stir up trouble and disturb the peace of the departed, but I never expected that my work and life would be thrown into chaos so quickly. Netizens gathered downstairs at my company, shouting at the top of their lungs that I didn't deserve to work, pressuring the company to fire me. The company directly issued a notice, putting me on unpaid leave and telling me to stay at home to avoid affecting their normal operations. Even my newly moved-in residential community was exposed, with security guards blocking a group of angry netizens outside the gate. The property management also sent a message, telling me not to go home recently for fear of danger. Wherever I go, people point fingers at me, calling me heartless. They forced me to cough up the so-called life-saving money and even demanded that I apologize to the dead. That same afternoon, a call came from Prince Charlie's assistant. "Hello Ms. Lin, Prince has been following your recent situation and noticed that you are entangled in public opinion. May I ask if you need any assistance?" A bunch of clowns using online public opinion as a weapon. I stared at the screen filled with those distorted and abusive comments, calmly replying, "I can handle this little matter myself." How dare they spread rumors with just a mouth? Do they really think I'm a pushover? Letting them throw mud at me, I hired bodyguards for protection and went straight to the funeral scene. As soon as I entered the door, my mother-in-law lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to grab my hair, but was immediately stopped by the bodyguard. I took out my phone and directly tipped 100 yuan in their live stream, then immediately spammed the comments section. The Zhou family is going to such great lengths to stream live. Isn't it just to get more tips from everyone? Kind-hearted netizens, don't just watch the show for free without contributing. Su Xiaoya was choked until her face turned red, screaming shrilly, "Shut up, you crazy woman who killed your father-in-law, and you even came to the funeral specifically to humiliate us." I glanced at the number of fans in their live stream and sneered, 500,000 people are watching. You'd better be legally responsible for what you say now. You say I killed him, you say I ran off with the money. Where's the evidence? If you can't produce it, I'll sue you for slander right now. Zhou Yiming shoved me hard, his eyes bloodshot. "Lin Muqing, do you have any conscience at all? My father just passed away, and you come to cause trouble at his funeral?" I sneered, raising an eyebrow mockingly. "You're using the dead as a cover to spread rumors and gain sympathy. You forced the company to suspend me, made it impossible for me to go home, and now you won't even let me demand an explanation." Su Xiaoya glared at me fiercely, her voice sharp. "How did we spread rumors? Wasn't it you who squandered the noble family's inheritance back then? It was because of you that my father completely ran out of money for medical treatment." I was waiting for those words. I immediately pulled up my phone and started a live stream. I directly initiated a live connection to the funeral scene's broadcast room. Did you all hear that? His father couldn't afford treatment because he didn't receive the inheritance. As for why he couldn't get it, watch the video. With that, I opened the video I had taken at the noble funeral. Su Xiaoya's dramatic, wailing behavior was clearly captured in the footage. "See, it's this woman who ignored the rules, insisted on wailing and broke the taboo. That's what messed everything up. No matter how many people tried to stop her, she couldn't be persuaded. She was determined to use this chance to cozy up to the nobility." At first, some netizens were skeptical, with everyone holding their own opinions, but soon, the public opinion in the live stream completely reversed. Prince Charles's assistant issued an announcement in the domestic media. It clearly stated that it was Zhou Yiming and Su Xiaoya who caused trouble at the funeral. They had previously voluntarily given up their status as first-in-line heirs to the inheritance, and their inheritance rights were revoked, all because they refused to share the money with those who disrespected the Duke. As for those claims about me ruining the inheritance, that's pure nonsense. Once the announcement was made, no one believed the Zhou family's lies anymore. What's going on? So it was the Zhou family who messed things up themselves, and then turned around to frame their daughter-in-law. Wow, that in-law family is just too disgusting, isn't it? They didn't get the inheritance, so they blamed their daughter-in-law for their father-in-law not having money for medical treatment. You're really good at scheming, treating your daughter-in-law like a fool. Facing the live camera, I glared fiercely at the opposite side. When something goes wrong in the Zhou family, you always blame the daughter-in-law. I should have divorced and stayed far away long ago. Zhou Yiming's eyes instantly turned red, and he punched the wall, roaring, "You are not allowed to leave. I forbid you to leave. Do you hear me?" he roared, abruptly cutting off the live streams on both sides. After throwing out the words "reflect on your actions," he locked me in the room. I spent half the night pondering in the room, knowing full well that calling the police would likely be useless. This family had long since lost all sense of decency. In the end, I still made the call to Prince Charlie, that very night. Bodyguards came to pick me up and took me to a hotel, where they kept watch around the clock. Later, Zhou Yiming tried several times to cause trouble, but each time he was stopped by the bodyguards. That same night, Prince Charlie called. "Don't worry, Ms. Lin, with the bodyguards here, no one will be able to lay a finger on you again. Soon, the company notified me to return to work. And the property management of the residential complex also assured me that it was safe to go back to my apartment. It was at this moment that I truly realized how reliable the lawyer Prince Charlie had hired for me was. While having private investigators gather evidence, he deliberately let the Zhou family's false accusations against me escalate. Even the embarrassing incident of crying and making a scene abroad was singled out and criticized by major media outlets. Netizens were completely outraged, relentlessly criticizing the Zhou family. "Have you no shame? You've embarrassed yourselves abroad just for money. When something goes wrong, you just push the blame onto your daughter-in-law. Do you really want to squeeze every last drop out of her?" It didn't take long before the two of them were exposed, stripped bare to their very core. The company kicked them out overnight, not even giving them time to pack their things. The neighbors were even more ruthless. They either avoided them when they met or cursed them to their faces for being heartless. Just as arrogant as they were when they slandered me, they are now equally pathetic in the eyes of everyone. Not long after, the security guard escorted me as I left work. Suddenly, a news alert popped up on my phone. Zhou Yiming and Su Xiaoyao were both handcuffed and detained by the police. One for illegal confinement, the other for malicious slander. My mother-in-law, being elderly, wasn't arrested, but she watched helplessly as her son and daughter were dragged away in handcuffs. He howled like a madman on the spot, his voice hoarse, but he wouldn't stop. Within a few days, he truly went mad. It's worth mentioning that Zhou Yiming's charge of illegal detention actually became solid evidence for my quick divorce. Freed from that rotten family, I felt a sense of relief all over. Previously, to fill the hole left by the Zhou family's father-in-law, I was living on a tight budget. Now, having shaken off all those rotten people and messy affairs, life feels incredibly free and joyful. I quickly saved up enough money and opened a cafe. It's not a particularly eye-catching business, but it feels very reassuring. I believe that the days to come will be like stepping up a staircase, climbing higher and higher, one step at a time. One afternoon later, a man with blonde hair and blue eyes walked into the shop. A royal crest pin was fastened to his collar, and I recognized it as the same style I had seen at the funeral. He walked up to the bar, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Miss Lin, could you buy me a cup of coffee?" When I looked up, the smile reached my eyes. "Prince Charlie, I never had the chance to properly thank you. Coffee, you can have as much as you want." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The year I turned 50, Gu Yunche cheated on me with his female student. When he brought home a woman 15 years his junior to force me to leave with nothing, I felt as if the sky had fallen. Back then, to let him focus on his work, I gave up the opportunity my professor offered me to study abroad, willingly returning to family life to care for his parents and raise our son. Later, I injured my right hand saving him and could no longer hold a scalpel. After decades of dedication and sacrifice, even if there's no credit, there's at least hard work. I never expected him to treat me like this. I cast a pleading gaze toward my in-laws and son. However, my in-laws, who had always been stubborn and traditional, suddenly turned democratic, urging me to leave with nothing and let Gu Yunche have his happy ending. The son I raised with my own hands actually found me shabby and ugly, asking me to step aside for Gu Yunche's happiness in his later years. I signed the divorce papers in despair, and they immediately drove me out of the house, watching me freeze to death that winter. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to 1980. Back then, my father-in-law had just broken his leg, my mother-in-law had just been diagnosed with cancer, and my son was about to start first grade. I looked at everything before me with excitement, anxiously examined my perfectly intact right hand, and burst into tears. This time, I will no longer sacrifice everything for anyone. I will pick up the scalpel again, dedicate myself to the medical profession, and save lives. With a loud clang, the dilapidated wooden door was kicked open angrily by Gu Yunche. He rushed over in a few steps, pointing at me fiercely, as if he could barely restrain himself from slapping me across the face. I gave Mu Gu that 200 yuan willingly. "If you dare to corner her in the dormitory again to demand money, don't blame me for being rude to you." I looked up at Gu Yunche's face. The emotions of excitement and eagerness to please from my past life had all turned into disgust and nausea. The scene from my past life, when the 53-year-old Gu Yunche brought Jiang Muge, who was heavily pregnant, to force me into a divorce, seemed to be right before my eyes. He proudly held the well-dressed Jiang Muge in his arms, telling me with a look of disdain that the Jeong family had turned things around with his help, and from then on, he and Jeong Muge could lie back and still rise to great heights. He wanted me to be sensible and voluntarily sign the divorce agreement before getting out. My in-laws fawned over the high and trampled on the low. To please Jeong Muge, they viciously cursed me, telling me to get out quickly and make room for Jeong Muge. My son followed their example, for the sake of his own future. He cruelly tied me up with rope and threw me into the storage room, giving me no food or water, vowing not to stop until I signed the divorce papers. Starving and on the verge of death, I begged them on my knees to let me go, but my son callously used a knife to cut my finger, forcing me to press my fingerprint. As soon as my in-laws heard that Gu Yunche had given Jeong Muge 200 yuan, the pickled vegetables in their bowls suddenly lost their appeal. Yunche, 200 yuan is 3 months' worth of your salary. Gu Yunche glared at his mother-in-law with a dark expression. You don't understand. Although Muge is just a poor student now, sooner or later, I can help the Jeong family turn things around. With the Jeong family's capabilities, my rise to success is just around the corner. Besides, Wuchan also earns a salary, right? If you tighten your belts a little. Where can't you save 200 yuan? After hearing Gu Yunche's words, my mother-in-law hesitated, then turned her gaze to me and shifted the topic. Wuchan, this is your fault. That girl Muge isn't having it easy. She's Yunche's student, so it's only natural for him to help her when she's in trouble. Don't be so narrow-minded. People will laugh at you if they find out. I let out a mocking laugh and turned my gaze to my in-laws. My father-in-law had broken his leg, and his monthly medical expenses amounted to 18 or 19 yuan. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer. Although it was in the early stages, surgery was still the safer option. I had discussed this with Gu Yunche before, and he said we could save a little each month and take my mother-in-law for the surgery once the weather warmed up. For the past few months, our whole family has been scrimping and saving. We even stretched a plate of pickles over 3 days, not daring to finish it, yet. He casually gave away 200 yuan without a second thought. In my previous life, I endured and compromised, only to be met with his heartless betrayal in the end. In this lifetime, whoever wants this scumbag can have him. I lowered my gaze with a cold smile, raised my hand, and smashed the only meat dish on the table to the ground. My salary is already more than enough to support your parents. I have no obligation to support your mistress. Since you want to rely on Jeong Muge to live off her, why not give her a proper status? Let's get a divorce, too. After saying that, I turned and ran outside, not caring in the slightest about the furious curses from Gu Yunche behind me or the heart-wrenching cries from Gu Jingzha. I ran all the way and arrived at Professor Zhao's office just before she got off work. Professor Zhao, about the opportunity to study abroad you mentioned last time, is there still a chance for me? Professor Zhao looked at me with pleasant surprise, bent down, and pulled out the application form from the drawer. I've been waiting for you to come to me. Looking at Professor Zhao's kind face, my nose tingled, and I choked up a bit. In my previous life, she earnestly discussed the future with me, telling me that this training opportunity was rare. Studying abroad for 5 years would guarantee at least a vice dean position upon return. She also said that women should not be trapped in the trivialities of family life and urged me to take a look at the outside world. However, I let her kindness down. For the sake of my family, I gave up this only chance to change my fate, even resigning from my job at the hospital, returning home willingly to serve them like a beast of burden. In the end, I was mocked by the whole family and met a fate where I could not rest in peace. I quickly filled in my name on the application form, looked up, and stared at Professor Zhao with utmost sincerity. You're right, this time, I will not change my original intention of dedicating myself to saving lives and healing the wounded for anyone. On the way back, it felt as if I had shed a heavy burden, and my steps became free and light. As soon as I arrived at the door, the long-lost aroma of stewed meat wafted towards me, with my in-laws being sick and Gu Yunche not contributing his salary to the household. We had been tightening our belts for months. It had been a long time since we last had stewed meat, and I couldn't help but wonder what guest had come today that made my in-laws splurge like this. I tiptoed and peered through the window. My usually stingy mother-in-law was picking up braised pork belly and putting it into Jeong Muge's bowl. Eat more. I heard from Yunche that you're too frugal to buy meat. Today, you can eat as much as you want. Jeong Muge didn't stand on ceremony either, taking big bites of the meat with its perfect balance of fat and lean. In the blink of an eye, half a bowl of rice was gone. My in-laws watched eagerly, swallowing their saliva repeatedly. Gu Jingzha's chopsticks, about to pick up more meat, were firmly pressed down by his mother. Gu Yunche looked at Jeong Muge with an admiring gaze, his eyes far from innocent. I pushed the door open forcefully and deliberately stood at the entrance for a moment, letting the cold wind howl into the room. My mother-in-law shot me a dissatisfied glance. If you have the guts to run out, why bother coming back? Ignoring my mother-in-law's exaggerated eye roll, I pulled up a stool and sat beside Jiang Muge, picking up a piece of meat from the plate and stuffing it into my mouth. Miss Jiang, are you unaware that my mother-in-law has cancer and can't eat meat? If you feel bad about it, just return the $200 Guyunche gave you. Buying all this meat would be a waste. Jiang Muge looked at me awkwardly, the food in her mouth neither spit out nor swallowed. She immediately stood up and rummaged in her pocket for a long time before pulling out the crumpled $200. Reluctantly, she handed the money to her mother-in-law. Auntie, I came today to return the money. Teacher Gu has already been very kind to me, and I don't want to put him in a difficult position. My mother-in-law glared at me fiercely, clutching the corner of the money as she looked at Guyunche, not daring to take it, yet unwilling to give it back. Seeing this, I quickly reached out and took the money from Jiang Muge's hand. You really shouldn't put him in a difficult position. If you like Guyunche, you should help him take care of his family more. Look at all the matters in this household. Someone has to manage them. After all, he's going to marry you sooner or later. So it's better to get familiar with things early. Jiang Muge looked at me in shock, his face flushed bright red. Teacher's wife, Xinhua-chan, are you done yet? Guyunche dragged me into the next room without any mercy, furious. What on earth are you trying to do? I let out a cold laugh. Wasn't I clear enough? I want a divorce, starting tomorrow. I'll be living at the unit until you agree to divorce. Guyunche glared at me fiercely and slammed the door in anger, staring at Guyunche's tall and straight figure. I let out a sarcastic laugh. Soon, he would realize that the love he wanted couldn't be cultivated amidst the daily grind of life. Early the next morning, I took my packed belongings and headed to the hospital dormitory. I thought, with Jiang Muge's capabilities, even if she had to grit her teeth and endure, she would at least hold out until I went abroad for further studies before causing any trouble, unexpectedly. I had only been in the hospital for 3 days when Guyunche came knocking on my door. Xinhua-chan, have you had enough of this? If you have, then hurry up and come home. I closed the medical record beside me and looked up at the exhausted Guyunche, decided to get a divorce. These past 3 days, the Gu family has been quite lively, to win Guyunche's favor. Jiang Muge actually had the audacity to move into the Gu family and took on the responsibility of caring for both the elderly and the young. Unfortunately, she had grown up accustomed to a life of luxury, and after the Jiang family's decline, she immediately found Guyunche as her support, having never experienced hardship and lacking any skills. She naively believed she could solve the Gu family's problems with sheer enthusiasm. She was simply too naive. On the night I left, in order to show off, she spent a fortune buying snacks and toys for Gu Jingzhe, and also bought cooked food and pickles for her in-laws. That night, the lights in the Gu family's house stayed on until after 10 o'clock, with laughter constantly coming from inside. Perhaps it was a case of extreme joy leading to sorrow. Because she had eaten food that was too oily and salty, her mother-in-law suddenly developed a high fever in the middle of the night. Simple physical cooling methods were completely ineffective. And in a moment of desperation, Guyunche had no choice but to take her mother-in-law to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor directly informed Guyunche that in order to save her life, her mother-in-law needed to undergo surgery immediately. With Guyunche not around, both her father-in-law and Gu Jingzhe needed Jiang Muge to take care of them. Under Jiang Muge's careful attention, her father-in-law ended up with a bruised forehead, a knocked-out tooth, and a broken hand from a fall. Both parents-in-law are hospitalized. Jiang Muge and Guyunche are extremely busy at the hospital, unable to take care of Gu Jingzhe, so they had to leave him at the neighbor's house next door. The neighbor's child is a good-for-nothing who doesn't study or work. I heard that this morning, Gu Jingzhe didn't even go to school and went into the mountains with that kid to hunt for wild game. Guyunche sighed wearily, his brow furrowed, and his tone softened. I won't get a divorce. I know I was wrong. From now on, I'll hand over all my salary to you. Please forgive me just this once. Mom just had surgery, and it will take a long time for her to recover. Dad isn't in good health either, and there's a lot of heavy work at home that still relies on you. Jingzhe has also started elementary school, and his homework needs your guidance. Why don't you take this opportunity to resign? After all, I can support our whole family. I looked coldly at Guyunche. In my previous life, he had persuaded me in the same way. I believed it. And what was the result? I quit my job, and Jiang Muge immediately got the opportunity to study abroad. The following year, Guyunche found a way to go abroad as well. Abroad, they were a perfect match, carefree and romantic. Guyunche spent all his money helping the Jiang family turn their fortunes around, not sending a single penny back home. I had no job and could only rely on odd jobs to make ends meet. In the bitter cold of winter, my hands turned black from the frost, yet I couldn't bring myself to buy a pair of gloves. I was even more reluctant to eat, saving everything for my in-laws in Gujingja. Several times, I fainted at the doorstep due to exhaustion. Gujingja called Guyunche to ask for money, but he always hung up the phone with vague excuses. Later, when they returned to the country in all their glory, Guyunche turned around and blamed me for not taking good care of his parents and son. I clenched my fists and deliberately mocked. Why not hire a nanny? Our combined salaries can afford it. I think Jian Muge would be a good choice. Young, familiar with the family, and your parents like her. For, how could she be a nanny? She is a top student. Her hands are meant to hold a scalpel. How can they be buried in the trivialities of life? I looked at my own rough hands with a pang of sadness. Am I not a top student? Should my hands be buried in the trivialities of life? Guyunche, you are far too biased toward Jiang Muge. Guyunche tried to defend himself. That's not what I meant. I curled my lips mockingly and pulled out the form from the drawer. I'm going abroad. Guyunche snatched the form in surprise, his voice suddenly rising. This spot should have been Muge's. I looked at Guyunche calmly, but my hands hidden under the table were clenched tightly into fists. What do you mean? It should have been hers. Jiang Muge is just an intern. How could such a good opportunity fall to her? Does she even have the capability for it? Guyunche's chest heaved with anger. He stared at me, taking several deep breaths before finally calming his emotions. He reached out to pull me closer. You should take the initiative to tell the leadership that you won't pursue further studies and give this opportunity to Muge. Muge is young. If her skills aren't up to par, I can teach her slowly. She needs this chance for further education more than you do. I coldly avoided Guyunche's hand. On what grounds? I am a key member of the hospital. This opportunity is what I deserve. What does Jian Muge have? Just because she climbed into your bed, you can abuse your power to give such a good thing to her. You're talking nonsense. After shouting, Guyunche awkwardly cleared his throat and lowered his voice. Muge and I are completely innocent. Stop spreading rumors. I'm not letting you go for the sake of our family. Can you really bear to abandon your home just for this training opportunity? Guyunche has always been skilled at playing mind games, always shifting the blame onto me, making me feel guilty and remorseful, so I foolishly let them take advantage of me. In my previous life, I was too responsible and couldn't bear to see Gujingja suffer, so I gradually fell into the trap Guyunche had set for me. In this life, I will only do what I want to do. What others think is none of my concern. I looked coldly at Guyunche. Gujingja is your child. Your parents didn't give birth to me or raise me, so I have no obligation to be filial to them. After the divorce, I will pay you every penny of Gujingja's child support. I have work to do. Please, dear, go back and take care of your parents. Guyunche furrowed his brows and stared at me, his eyes so dark with anger that it seemed they might overflow. Just as he was about to curse, a sudden commotion erupted outside, followed by the sound of my office door being kicked open with a loud bang. The man glared at Guyunche with a sinister look, holding a knife. I want your life. Before I could figure out what was happening, Guyunche suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me in front of him, hiding behind me. He gasped for breath in a panic. Yue-chan, he's clearly here for me. He won't do anything to you. Just stall him for me. Once the police arrive, we'll be safe. In my previous life, I listened to Guyunche's nonsense and recklessly shielded him, choosing to sacrifice myself to save him when a man brandishing a knife charged at me in a frenzy. My right palm was nearly severed by the man, and I could never hold a scalpel again. I lowered my gaze to stare at my right hand, then turned and grabbed Guyunche's arm, forcefully shoving him away. In this life, I will not abandon the medical career I love for this man. 5. Guyunche glared at me with a ferocious expression. Yue-chan, have you lost your mind? I took a step back, looking coldly at Guyunche's disheveled state. Guyunche, did you ever love me? Guyunche was taken aback, and before he could speak, he was entangled by a fierce-looking man. The man was determined to take Guyunche's life, each strike of the knife delivered with astonishing force. Guyunche simply couldn't dodge it. He was slashed all over by the man, covered in blood. And I watched with bated breath, just as the man raised his knife to chop down on Guyunche's palm. Jian Muge's voice suddenly rang out from outside the door. Let go of Teacher Gu. I've already called the police. The man glanced coldly at Jian Muge, spat out the words shameless couple, and then without hesitation, he chopped off Guyunche's hand. Guyunche let out a heart-wrenching scream before collapsing into unconsciousness. When the police arrived, the man offered no resistance, only fixing Jian Muge with a dark, menacing glare. You little bitch, it was you who killed my daughter. Guyunche was the lead surgeon for her operation. Just to give you practice, he treated my daughter's life as worthless, leaving her to die alone on the operating table. Upon hearing this, Jian Muge's face instantly turned deathly pale, shaking her head. Her voice trembled as she said, I don't understand what you're talking about. The man snorted coldly. Only by making a big fuss can the truth come to light. You little bitch, I'm not afraid of death. I just want to expose the dirty deeds of you two, so we can all go to hell together. Jian Muge covered her ears in terror, her emotions somewhat out of control. You're talking nonsense. I didn't do it. Watching Jian Muge's state, my heart suddenly tightened. In my previous life, after the incident happened to me, a colleague I was on good terms with came to visit me at home. She hesitated before speaking. Yue-chan, it's a good thing you resigned, otherwise who knows what other accusations they might have pinned on you. Just focus on recovering and taking care of your family at home. That's a good life too. Don't believe the rumors outside, they're all false. At that time, I was completely confused by what she said, and when I tried to ask more, she refused to say anything further. Later, Jian Muge went abroad for further studies, and Gu Yunche also went abroad not long after. The matter was just brushed off lightly. Now that I think about it, the incident of Jian Muge causing someone's death must have been pinned on me. Dr. Gu's surgery is too difficult, only you and Dr. Gu in our hospital can perform it. Hearing the words of the other doctor, I snapped back to reality and fixed my gaze on Jian Muge. I was just so frightened that I'm a bit unsettled. I definitely can't perform the surgery now. Dr. Jiang is Dr. Gu's prized student, so why not let Dr. Jiang handle it? Jian Muge stared at me in panic, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. While the other doctors chimed in, since Dr. Shin can't do it, let Dr. Jiang take over. Dr. Gu always takes good care of Dr. Jiang, and you are his only student. In many previous surgeries, Dr. Gu insisted on letting you be the lead surgeon despite opposition. This time, I'm sure you'll do just fine. Jian Muge lowered her head in distress, then turned and knelt before me with a thud. Madam, I beg you to save Dr. Gu. He's your husband. If you don't save him, his hand will be ruined. I stared coldly at Jian Muge. So you know he's my husband, since you know he has a family. Why didn't you keep your distance from him? Jian Muge was taken aback, tears streaming down her face in pairs. No, it's not like that. Dr. Gu and I have nothing between us. We're just teacher and student. You can't make such baseless accusations. I sneered. Slander. I'm afraid everyone in the hospital knows about your affair except me. In my past life, I was too slow-witted. I worked with Gu Yunche for so long and never suspected him and Jian Muge. This time, I'll strike first and make sure they both lose face and can't stay in the hospital. Jian Muge glared at me fiercely, pretending to be strong as she got up from the ground. If you're so heartless and refuse to save Teacher Gu, then I'll save him myself. Watching Jian Muge's retreating figure as he walked towards the operating room, I sneered and curled my lips. With Jian Muge's abilities, Gu Yan's hand is definitely beyond saving. He should experience every bit of the suffering I endured in my past life. 6. Why can't I even make a fist with my hand anymore? Who performed the surgery on me? Was it Yue-chan? With her skills, reconnecting all the nerves in such a short time wouldn't have been difficult at all. She did it on purpose. She wanted to kill me. I want to see her. I want to see her right now. Watching Gu Yan's relentless outburst in the hospital room, I clenched my right hand. In my previous life, my surgery was personally performed by Gu Yunche. At that time, his explanation was that the nerves in my palm were severed, and he had done his utmost to ensure I could manage daily life, but I would never be able to pick up a scalpel again. Back then, I never doubted him. Little did I know that for Jian Muge, he would go so far as to tamper with the surgery, driven to such madness. Professor Gu, it wasn't your wife who performed the surgery on you. It was me. You. How could you handle such a difficult surgery? You haven't even completed your internship yet. How could you be allowed in the operating room? Jian Muge, who gave you the nerve? Do you know that because of you, my hand is ruined? Even through the door of the hospital room, I could feel the vibrations from Gu Yan's roar, so he was well aware that Jian Muge, as an intern, couldn't be the lead surgeon. Yet, how could he have allowed her to perform surgery on someone else? Jian Muge shrank back in fear, her voice trembling. It was Yue-chan who refused to operate on you. I was afraid of missing the best treatment window, so a sudden clang sound came from the hospital room. Gu Yunche threw the thermos bottle beside him directly at Jian Muge. Do you know what the golden treatment window is? Do you really think you got this internship on your own merit? Without me, you're nothing, Jian Muge. My hand is ruined. I'll never be able to hold a scalpel again, and your career is over too. How are you going to save the Jiang family now? Jian Muge cried with tears streaming down her face, but there was no trace of the usual pity in Gu Yan's eyes, only hatred replacing it. I slowly pushed open the door of the ward, placed the medicine to be changed at the entrance, and thoughtfully reminded Jian Muge, remember to change the dressing for Dr. Gu. You're the attending doctor. Why do I have to bring the medicine over? Jiang Muge glared at me with red eyes, her body trembling slightly. Xinyue-chan, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You deliberately provoked me into performing the surgery for Dr. Gu. You intentionally made Dr. Gu resent me, and you purposely prevented him from helping our Jiang family turn things around. I never expected you to be so malicious, I snorted coldly. Don't you know whether you have the ability to perform this surgery or not? If I couldn't do it, you could have invited doctors from other hospitals to handle it. My condition yesterday was indeed not good. I didn't dare to risk Gu Yanch's career, and I never imagined you would be so bold as to take on such a difficult surgery. Or were you doing it on purpose, thinking that if Gu Yanch's hand was ruined, you could take his place and help the Jiang family turn things around yourself? You're slandering me. Jiang Muge frantically roared at me. I had no idea I could request doctors from other hospitals. I only stepped into the operating room because no one was helping Dr. Gu with the surgery. None of you ever told me. You all conspired to harm me. I glanced at Gu Yunche, whose face had turned deathly pale, and deliberately taunted. I thought your precious student was so capable, but it turns out she's just a useless fool. Gu Yunche stared at me, his lips trembling as he was about to speak. When suddenly a knock sounded at the door, 2 police officers stood outside. They showed their badges and stared sternly at Jiang Muge. Comrade Jiang Muge, please come with us. 7. Jiang Muge is suspected of being involved in a major medical accident and has been detained by the police. The hospital's first reaction upon learning of this incident was to dismiss Jiang Muge. Since Gu Yunche is also suspected of involvement in this matter, the hospital has placed him on suspension. With Jiang Muge taken away, the follow-up care for Gu Yanch's surgery has fallen on me. Looking at Gu Yanch's gruesome and terrifying palm, I carefully sprinkled the medicine onto the wound. The stitching technique wasn't very good, so it might heal a bit slower. Avoid getting it wet and don't exert any force these days. Gu Yunche stared at me with reddened eyes. Are you satisfied now? Are you happy that I ended up like this because of Jiang Muge? I tightened the bandage forcefully, watching Gu Yunche wince in pain, and curled the corner of my mouth. What satisfaction do I have? At least Jiang Muge showed mercy and spared your life. What about that little girl? I heard she was only in her teens. What were you thinking when you had Jiang Muge perform the surgery on her? I stood up, looking down at him from above. Gu Yunche, you're a murderer. Gu Yunche struggled to get up urgently. No, it was just a minor surgery. I didn't expect Jiang Muge to be so foolish. He looked up at me. I overestimated her. I thought she had talent like you. He struggled to reach out and grab my white coat. I know I was wrong. Given my current condition, I'll need you to take care of the family from now on. Don't worry, I'll work hard to recover. I believe it won't be long before I can pick up a scalpel again. Mom just had surgery. So don't tell her about this yet. Try to keep it from Dad as well. Find some time to bring Jingja back. I still want to eat the porridge you make. After you finish work, go home and cook it, then bring it to me. These past few days without you, I haven't been eating well or sleeping well, and I think I've even lost weight. I sarcastically pulled the white coat out of Gu Yanch's hand and handed him the divorce report from the Civil Affairs Bureau. I've already signed it. Before I go abroad, please come with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to sign it. Gu Yunche tore up the divorce report angrily. I said I won't get a divorce. Xinyue-chan, have you no shame? How dare you use something like this to force me into a divorce? I've already apologized. What more do you want? I'm warning you not to push your luck. I lowered my gaze to the torn pieces of the agreement on the floor and sighed sadly. That's just how it is in this era. Divorce is shameful. But infidelity isn't. As long as a man admits his mistake, a woman should forgive him unconditionally. I stepped on the fragments of the agreement, staring indifferently at Gu Yunche. If you refuse to divorce, so be it. I'll file for divorce immediately when I return in 5 years. Gu Yunche, you'd better watch yourself. Gu Yunche waited for me to raise my voice and shout, How dare you? How dare you go abroad? If you dare to go abroad, I'll make sure everyone here knows you're a selfish woman who abandons her family and child for her own future. Shameless. Are you in such a hurry to divorce me because there's another man out there? Xinyue-chan, you are not allowed to go abroad. Who will take care of the entire family if you leave? I looked coldly at Gu Yanch's selfish and self-serving face. The last sentence is what you truly care about, isn't it, Gu Yunche? I am not your family's nanny. I am my own person. And I will no longer sacrifice my dreams and career for anyone. In my previous life, I endured humiliation to preserve peace. Traditional thinking made me tolerate again and again, having lived a second life. The truth I have genuinely come to realize is that only those who are free and selfish can live with peace of mind and fare better. I pushed the door open and walked out. Just as I reached the entrance of the ward, a pair of grubby little hands blocked my way. Gu Jingzhe looked up with a dirty face, his voice choked with tears. Mom, are you abandoning me too? 8. On the day I gave birth to Gu Jingzhe, I had a difficult labor and suffered a massive hemorrhage. My mother-in-law insisted on not letting the doctor perform surgery on me to save money. I struggled in the hospital room for 3 days and 2 nights, with critical condition notices issued one after another. When the doctor asked Gu Yunche whether to save the mother or the baby, he hesitated for a long time before pushing aside his mother and choosing to save the mother, signing the consent form for a cesarean section. After giving birth to Gu Jingzhe, I passed out. The doctor said I had been in a coma for 3 whole days, and if I hadn't woken up, there would have been no saving me, because my body was injured during childbirth. Gu Jingzhe is the only child I will ever have in this lifetime. Since he was little, I have treated him extremely well, giving him all the best things. No matter how poor our family's circumstances were, there was always meat in his bowl, and he never had to wear patched clothes, probably because I spoiled him too much since he was little. In the end, I ended up raising an ungrateful traitor who bites the hand that feeds him. In my previous life, it was he who personally pushed me out the door. At that time, I desperately grabbed his hand, begging him to give me a way out for the sake of having given birth to and raised him, but he still cruelly pushed me out, repeating the same words: I can't have a mother as incompetent and shabby as you. I'm ashamed of you. This time, I want to be the capable and glamorous mother in his heart, and accordingly, he should endure some hardships. I bent down, gently touched his face, feeling a pang of sadness in my heart. After all, he is the child I risked my life to bring into this world. No matter how much I resent him, I can't completely sever this mother-son bond. Mommy isn't abandoning you. Mommy just needs to go out to work. From now on, you'll live with Daddy, Grandpa, and Grandma. When Mommy comes back from work, I'll buy you lots of fun toys and delicious treats. Okay, don't listen to your mom's lies. Once she leaves, she'll never come back. Jingzhe, hurry up and beg your mom not to go. Who will take care of our whole family if she leaves? Look, your grandparents are old, and your dad is sick. If your mom leaves, you'll become a wild child with no one to care for you. Have you seen how the kids without mothers at your school get bullied? You'll end up like that. Seeing my mother-in-law's sharp-tongued and divisive demeanor, I stepped forward and slapped her across the face. Ever since the day I married Gu Yunche, she has been bullying me with her domineering ways. I served her like a beast of burden for half my life, and in the end, she still despises and looks down on me. Just because I'm an orphan with no parents, I couldn't pave the way for Gu Yunche to rise to success effortlessly, so even if I did my best, she still thought it was only natural. Without a shred of gratitude, my mother-in-law stared at me in shock, and the next second, she burst into loud sobs. There's no justice in the world, a daughter-in-law hitting her mother-in-law. I sneered at my mother-in-law. For someone like me, you should have Gu Yunche divorce me. It's not that I'm clinging to your family and refusing to leave, it's your son who won't divorce me. The decision to study abroad has already been made. Even if you use Gu Jingzhe, I won't stay. If you don't want to raise him, send him to an orphanage. After all, he's Gu Yunche's child. If he's not ashamed, I don't care either. Seeing my mother-in-law's stunned expression, I threw the payment notice from my pocket at her. From now on, I won't spend a single penny on your family. You can handle your own bills. My mother-in-law stared blankly at the consumption notification slip on the floor, and the next second, she cried even harder. This is rebellion, rebellion. Xinhua-chan, if you dare to leave, I'll find a new wife for Yunche tomorrow. I let out a mocking laugh. Before you find a new wife, remember to have Gu Yunche divorce me. Bigamy can land you in jail. 9. Because I had a falling out with the Gu family, the hospital, fearing further complications, directly transferred me to another department. Thanks to the hospital, I hadn't seen anyone from the Gu family for several days. On the day of my departure, I woke up early in the morning, planning to visit Professor Zhao one last time. Both opportunities in my 2 lives were given to me by her, so it was only right for me to come and bid her farewell. Standing outside Professor Zhao's office, before I could even knock, I heard Gu Yunche's agitated voice from inside. Why did you give this opportunity to Xinhua-chan? Do you know that because of you, you've ruined our entire family? Dear Gu, that's not the right way to look at it. This is a rare opportunity, and as a family member, you should fully support her. In just 5 years, when Xinhua-chan returns, she'll be a key member of the hospital. That's a good thing. Gu Yunche snorted coldly. What good thing? I just want a woman who can take care of the home. I don't need a capable woman. The more mediocre she is, the more she'll be devoted to taking care of our whole family. Before, Xinhua-chan had already agreed to resign. If it weren't for you giving her this opportunity, our family wouldn't have had so many things happen recently. Now that she's leaving, Who will do the household chores, and who will take care of the elderly and children? Fury turned into bitter laughter. Before Professor Zhao could speak again, I pushed the door open, stormed over to Gu Yunche, and slapped him across the face. Gu Yunche, you truly disgust me. Gu Yunche was stunned for a moment, raising his hand to retaliate. I turned my face to dodge, and as he was about to strike again, Professor Zhao immediately called security to drag him out. Xinhua-chan, you are a despicable woman, you have no shame. Watching Gu Yunche being dragged away by security, my hand trembled slightly. How could I have been so blind to fall for him back then? Professor Zhao kindly took my hand and said, don't worry about what others think, you must bravely be yourself. I nodded gratefully, my voice choked with emotion. Professor Zhao, thank you. The moment the plane took off, I felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation, looking at the scenery below the window. I let out a heavy sigh. From today onward, Xinhua-chan is starting a new life. 5 years later, I was wearing my favorite red coat, surrounded by the dean and the hospital's key staff, as I returned to the hospital once again. In the past, Gu Yunche always disliked me wearing brightly colored clothes. It wasn't until I went abroad that I realized vibrant colors could make me look even more beautiful. The hospital remained unchanged, just as it was 5 years ago. Many of the doctors in the hospital are still familiar faces. When they saw me, they greeted me warmly, saying, Dear Shin, you've really changed, you look so beautiful. I always said you were a natural beauty, but Dear, Gu used to say, bringing up Gu Yunche on such a good day is a real mood killer. Exactly, what a mood killer. I smiled at them. Not a mood killer, our divorce agreement hasn't been finalized yet. On the way to the Gu family's house, my emotions were somewhat complicated. When the car stopped at the entrance of the Gu family's house, I thought we had pulled up to the wrong place. The once clean and tidy doorway was now overgrown with weeds, and if you didn't look closely, you'd think no one lived there. As I hesitated about whether to get out of the car and knock, the door was pushed open from the inside. Gu Jingzhe, in his teens, struggled to walk out carrying a full bucket of water. In the past, all these dirty and tiring tasks were done by me. I never expected that after I left, they would make Gu Jingzhe do them. He's just a child. I angrily pushed open the car door, and Gu Jingzhe froze in place the moment he saw me. He moved his lips and called out, Mom. I lowered my gaze and walked over to him. Where is Gu Yunche? Why did he make you do something like this? Gu Jingzhe lowered his eyes, tears streaming uncontrollably down his face. The year you left, Grandma passed away. The following winter, Grandpa was pushed out of the house by Dad and froze to death. After Dad's hands were crippled, he started drinking heavily and neglected everything. The money for my schooling was all spent on his alcohol. Last year, Dad suffered a stroke and became paralyzed, unable to get up ever again. Looking at Gu Jingzhe's appearance, my nose tingled with emotion, and I pulled him toward the house. As soon as I opened the door, a foul odor rushed out, nearly making me vomit. Gu Yunche, lying on the Kong, moved his eyes. The moment he saw me, he frantically covered himself with the quilt, shouting, get out of here. I placed the prepared divorce agreement by Gu Yunche's hand and said, sign it. Gu Yunche laughed mockingly, then burst into tears. Xinhua-chan, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I brought this upon myself. I can sign the divorce agreement. I only have one request. Please take Jingzhe with you. I beg you. Looking at Gu Yunche, who no longer resembled the handsome and dashing man he once was, I lowered my eyes. All right, Gu Yunche signed the divorce agreement, and we officially divorced. Although I decided to continue taking care of Gu Jingzhe, to avoid the tragedy of my previous life, I resolved to keep my distance from him. I would only be responsible for raising him, and I was unwilling to pour any other emotions into him. So I sent him to a boarding school, where he would come home once a month. 3 years later, I achieved my goal and became the director of the hospital. Over the past 3 years, I have performed thousands of surgeries without a single mistake, been honored as the city's most beautiful doctor, and my office is filled with banners of gratitude. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.